Welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me today because we have a truly fascinating set of global developments to unpack from June 6th, 2026. What we're really looking at today is just how fragile and deeply interconnected our world actually is. We often tend to think of the news as these isolated little incidents happening in far-off places, but as we're going to see, local events almost always create global ripples. A single action in one region can literally disrupt supply chains across the hemisphere or trigger emergency diplomacy continents away. It is a genuine domino effect, and we are going to trace exactly how those dominoes are falling. Okay, let's dive right in. We've got our explainer today broken down into 4 clear tracks. First, we'll examine escalating Middle East conflicts. Then, we'll pivot over to global health and food. Third, we're going to look at global politics and unrest. And finally, we'll wrap up by examining infrastructure and local tragedies. Section 1. Escalating Middle East conflicts. Geopolitical dominoes in motion. Look how incredibly fast things are moving in the Strait of Hormuz crisis right now. It's a rapid-fire sequence. First step, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, fires on 4 merchant tankers trying to navigate the waterway without local authorization. Bam, the first domino falls. Step 2 follows almost immediately. United States Central Command, or CENTCOM, forces hit back with retaliatory airstrikes. These strikes directly targeted surveillance and military infrastructure over on Iran's Keshem Island. So what we're seeing is a localized maritime dispute instantly blowing up into a direct, state-level military response in one of the most volatile transit corridors on Earth. And this perfectly illustrates how the theater of conflict just refuses to stay localized. The tension widened instantly. The Kuwaiti Defense Ministry actually had to confirm that their air defenses intercepted 7 Iranian ballistic missiles fired toward their country. And at the exact same time, the Bahraini military successfully blocked 3 Iranian missiles plus a swarm of one-way attack drones targeting their territory. We're witnessing the real-time activation of advanced air defense systems across multiple sovereign nations. It's the geopolitical domino effect in its absolute rawest form. Now, while all that military action is going on, emergency diplomacy is kicking into high gear just as fast. We've got 2 massive, high-stakes diplomatic efforts running totally parallel. On one side, Pakistani Interior Minister Mohsen Naqvi is in Tehran, meeting with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araqi. They're frantically trying to negotiate a regional ceasefire and find some kind of diplomatic exit ramp to halt the 2026 Iran war. Meanwhile, on a completely different track, high-level Hamas delegations are in Cairo, Egypt, meeting with international mediators. Their goal is to execute the first stage of that foundational ceasefire framework signed way back in October 2025 and figure out the terms for Phase 2. It's 2 massive negotiations happening simultaneously, both desperately trying to stop the cascade. Now, wrap your head around this number, 150. That is how many Hezbollah-linked sites the Israeli military struck over a deeply intense 48-hour window. This is a severe, undeniable fracturing of the fragile Israel-Lebanon ceasefire. I mean, the sheer scale of hitting 150 targeted sites in just 2 days represents a massive shift in operational tempo. And of course, a shift like that comes with a tragic human and geopolitical cost. As a direct result of those strikes, at least 10 people were killed in Lebanon. But here is the critical complication. That casualty list includes 3 Lebanese National Army soldiers, and one of them was a brigadier general. Because state military personnel were killed, the IDF has officially announced they're investigating the deaths. This makes an already tense situation incredibly complex. Losing official state military figures acts as a highly sensitive new domino, adding some really dangerous pressure to that broken ceasefire. Section 2. Global Health and Food. Biological Threats and Victories. Okay, let's talk about the screwworm. It is a highly destructive parasite, and right now, a sudden outbreak in the southern U.S. has triggered a massive agricultural nightmare. And why does a bug matter to the global picture? Because of the international supply chain reaction. Biosecurity concerns have spiked so much that Canada officially enacted an emergency border policy. They put a total ban on all live livestock imports coming from Texas. It's just a perfect example of how a microscopic biological threat can become a primary domino that dictates international trade overnight. We're also seeing a really profound and honestly staggering juxtaposition in global health capabilities today. On one side of the globe, an incredible victory. An American physician who caught Ebola while working in the Democratic Republic of the Congo was successfully treated and actually discharged in good health from the Charité Hospital in Berlin, Germany. It's an absolute testament to advanced medical logistics.
But then you'll look at Bangladesh, where public health officials just confirmed a severe spike in a measles outbreak. 3 children tragically died from a completely preventable disease in a single 24-hour window. It's a very stark reminder of the immense disparities in global health unfolding on the exact same day.
Section 3. Global Politics and Unrest. Institutional Shifts and Fractures. Here's another number that really tells the story: 20. We are seeing severe domestic fracturing in Iran right now, as high school students have launched widespread, highly coordinated street protests across 20 separate provinces. These are absolutely not isolated incidents. The youth are directly protesting controversial state education policies, some really harsh final exam regulations, and recent changes to university admissions. When high schoolers can pull off coordinated protests across 20 provinces, you know you're looking at massive internal tension. It's a domestic domino effect challenging the state from the ground up. Let's move on and see how this kind of political tension is shaking up the rest of the globe. We have 3 major rapid-fire shifts happening. First, some historic religious diplomacy. Pope Leo XIV arrived in Madrid for a 6-day visit, which is wild because it's the first time a sitting pope has visited Spain in 15 years. Then, extreme election tension in Eastern Europe. Armenia's Central Investigative Authority arrested 6 legislative candidates from the opposition Strong Armenia Party literally 24 hours before citizens head to the polls. And finally, coalition clashes. Lithuania's governing Social Democratic Party officially kicked the hard-right Dawn of Nemuna's party right out of its ruling coalition over widening policy disagreements and leader disputes. Each of these is a massive political domino falling in its own right. Section 4. Infrastructure and local tragedies. The human impact. Over on the infrastructure fronts, Lebanon has officially inaugurated its second international facility, the Rein Muawad Airport in Kliet. This is a hugely strategic push. Lebanon is actively trying to secure sovereign air transit corridors that are totally independent of Beirut. Because when you live in a region where security can flip on a dime, that regional instability forces the state to build redundant infrastructure just to ensure the country can stay connected and survive. But, infrastructure isn't just about massive national projects. It's intimately tied to the spaces we live in, and when it fails, the cascade is devastating. In Porto Sant'Elpidio, Italy, there was a sudden, fatal disaster that started with just a single point of failure, a gas cylinder explosion. But that explosion was powerful enough to cause the total collapse of a residential building. Emergency crews rushed to the scene, but tragically, 3 people were killed and 2 others were severely injured. It's a somber reality check on how sudden infrastructural failure hits local communities the hardest. And finally, we see exactly how distant geopolitical conflict crashes into everyday local reality in Sudan. A targeted drone strike tore through a crowded civilian marketplace in the Abu Zaima area of Hamrat al-Sheikh, over in Kordofan. The explosion killed at least 11 people and left dozens of everyday shoppers wounded. It just brutally highlights the human cost of the Sudanese civil war, where advanced military technology suddenly ravages everyday spaces of commerce and community. So that brings us to the big question I want to leave you with today. As we watch all these regional crises cross borders, from the Strait of Hormuz to Canadian agriculture, from Iranian high schools to European coalitions, which of today's headlines is going to fundamentally reshape tomorrow? We've seen firsthand how fast the dominoes can fall and how local sparks ignite these massive global consequences. Keeping an eye on these connections is honestly the only way to understand the bigger picture. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep asking those big questions, and I'll see you next time as we continue to decode our complex world.